All right, we need to talk about the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq 100. Going into the market today, we expected upside potential. I gave you clear overall targets, and I mentioned that on Twitter also. But we had some pretty crucial news into today and going on that dropped the market as a whole. And I believe this is something that we need to be focused on in the near-term future, as well as CPI coming out on Thursday. We're going to jump right into that here. If you don't know, basically, FTX is being bought out by Binance. And the reason for all this happening right now is because FTX is facing a massive issue, a liquidity crunch, to say the least. Basically, if you don't know what's happening here, FTX locked all withdrawals on their platform. Yes, it seems illegal. Yes, it seems sketchy. And this should be concerning. Bitcoin dumped immediately. If you look at the price of Bitcoin, I had some charts on Twitter, was updating you guys also. You dropped from 20.6 all the way down to new 52-week lows of 17.1. And I believe you're setting up for more downside potential here, specifically on crypto. Now, what does this mean for the market? Why did this affect the Nasdaq? Why did this affect ES and Dow? In my opinion, this is just my opinion, it was a shock reaction. I think this was a buy the dip type moment for the day because I don't believe crypto influences traditional markets. That's my opinion. That's how I view this. Just personal beliefs. Do whatever you got to do whatever you want to think. I don't really care. Now, going forward, we bounced back pretty quick. Crypto had a little bit of a bounce back as well. I don't think crypto holds up in comparison to stock market. I'm going to go over my targets here also. Before we go any further, I have to actually consider doing something just really simple. Liking and subscribing, people. I post these videos every single day so you're prepared. And I tell you the good, the bad, even if I am unsure on the day. I tell you what I see happening unbiasedly, and I show the gains, and I most importantly show the losses. Transparency on this channel is key above all else. So I recommend doing that and following on Twitter because I'm posting updates and charts literally, as you can see, all day long. I just post charts for you. So anyways, let's get into this. Now, where are we at? Where are we going? Targets on the day were really simple. What I was looking at is the weekly, and I was looking at indicators, the 200 MA. I posted this pretty early on Twitter. I like to use Twitter because I can go back and kind of back check my information for you guys so you never know that I'm lying to you. So roughly 4 hours ago, I said you were at 11.1, and I said you're probably going towards that 200 MA, and I posted it last night also. Coming to the chart, what happened? You proceeded, you got really close, 11.23, then that Bitcoin news shot you down, and you're popping back up. I still believe this is a massive level. It's at 200 MA on the weekly. Now, why is this so important? I just want to show you how we've behaved on this level specifically. If you go on the 1 hour and we just take a quick zoom out, look, you broken through, you mounted, you held the level, right? The dotted line is where we need to see and watch. Now, if we go to the daily chart, it's a little bit more clear, okay? So I just want to show you where exactly you are and how you're moving. If you go back all the way to COVID drop, you can see you bounced to the T on that level. You bounced almost there right there, and now you're kind of sitting below it as we speak. This is going to be a massive level overall on the broad market, so you need to understand that going forward. I believe this level is going to be a major resistance across the board. But I do want to highlight the strongest area on the market is not the Nasdaq. The Nasdaq is actually the weakest. So when we get here into the charts and we look a little bit deeper at something like Dow, Dow continues to look incredible. Dow continues to kind of break barriers and go ballistic. It's incredibly bullish, already back above last week's levels, right? You continue to kind of prove the market wrong and move in a very bullish sense. And the reason is pretty logical. But if we look here on the 4-hour time frame as well, you can see we're in a clear-cut supply. So there's going to be stocks I'm going to mention later in the video that I like and that are setting up really great. But when you look at where we're at based on the charts, it doesn't justify a move continued to the upside, okay? You have to acknowledge where we're at and where we're going, right? And so that's what we're looking at here. It's all based on supply and demand. That's all we look at here. And right now you're in supply. I think you could break this on Dow. I think Dow has killed it on earnings, but you have to acknowledge where you're at. That's where we're at right now. Now, looking at ES and what's happening with SPY. If we look at ES, it's pretty clear here also. Great reaction so far, and you're pushing back up. I don't have a clear-cut supply until we get back to the 3,900 level. I don't think we're going to hit that level. I just don't. It would take a little bit. It would take a little bit to get us to that level. But right now, you are getting some upside, and I just want to highlight where you're at. I believe our main support we're watching is around 38.20. This has been kind of the line in the sand. We've rejected and held it so far. So we rejected, then we flipped and held it. So that is good news right now. However, again, you have to have a little bit of caution, right? And before I go any further, I do want to highlight one trade I have just before I forget. I did take some lottos and held those overnight with DWAC. This is True Social. I think it's a risky trade. I want to 100% say that. But right now you're at supply. You are rejecting. But I do believe if this can get above $30, you will easily run to 45 to 44, almost in a hurry. And then you have a little bit of resistance here at 37, 38. That's what I'm watching here on True Social. I would keep it on your radar just with everything happening politically wise. And then you also have Trump saying he's going to have a very big announcement on November 15th. So these are all things I think you have to, keep your eyes open and be watching this because, at any time these could really go off and have some crazy movements across the board. So be prepared and make sure you're really, really watching these, specifically DWAC. I absolutely love it. So going back in here, I just want to highlight where we're at and how we're moving. I see upside into the 11.3 area, and then CPI will do the rest of our business, okay? So again, I'm going to have this highlighted on Twitter so everyone can see this is where I see upside into. Besides that, before CPI, I don't know if I see too much, before CPI gets released. It just wouldn't make too much sense for me. That's ultimately my target right now coming into this area. We're already rejecting on the 4-hour, but I believe we could test that on the weekly. That's the major level there. Now, when we look at some of the other big indicators that we've talked about here on the channel, DXY, I do want to highlight this. A lot of people were talking about this today. I did a live earlier. DXY, you are down in our zone. We mentioned this yesterday, right? We mentioned we had a little bit of downside potential, and we hit it, okay? These levels aren't made up, people. I don't just pick these levels off the top of my head and, snap my fingers and bam, I just write them and bring them onto the chart, right? These are calculated. These are proven, okay? 1, 2, 3 tests so far this level, and you're bouncing again. We do want to see how the dollar reacts here. You are bouncing. You're getting a decent reaction so far, better than you had back here. So I do like that. So we want to see the dollars going to continue to bounce into tomorrow and start moving back towards the upside. That's going to be very critical here specifically for indexes also. So we want to make sure this is all on Twitter and I share it all there so you're ready for this market. Now, if we look at something like yields, what are those doing? We saw some downside there. This is good news if you're looking at the market from a bullish aspect. If you're watching the market go up and yields are going up like they were yesterday, then it's a sign of caution in my opinion. Now, the fact that we're actually going up and yields are somewhat coming down, they're not really coming down that much. This is a sign of, in my opinion, the possibility of continuation. That's something you wanted to see. We also mentioned if you're looking here, you're clearly trying to watch and see, are you going to continue this higher low trend here on the 10-year yield and 30-year yield? We can also go look at the inversion here just so everyone can see. We've been tracking this to the T. We do know there's a little bit more room to come test those higher lows that we did not test so far. So you can come back down, still test and get that bounce. We've been watching for the inversion from the 10 to the 30. Those are the most important for me, the most important that I've been watching continually. Now, looking at the market, that's essentially it. Okay, I just want to say that right now. That's essentially the main points that I'm watching. There's not too much to talk about here because the big news on the week is going to come with CPI. We all know that, right? CPI, biggest deal on the week. What do you need to watch out for Thursday? Someone tried to comment yesterday and say CPI wasn't going to be that influential. You're entitled to your opinion here on the channel. I love to hear your guys' opinion, but I'm going to tell you right now and tell that person, I'm not going to call you out, but I'm going to say, you either have no idea what the Fed is saying or you're just ignorant or I don't know. I really don't. Maybe you're just delusional. But verbatim, I'm operating based on what the Fed has said. And so far, this has made us money here on the channel, right? It made me money specifically. Don't take anything I say as financial advice. But if you're looking at this, you have to acknowledge what's happening, okay? And I do want to make that said. What the Fed has said is based on this information. If CPI does not change, if the revisions don't look positive, they're going to continue with these hikes. So you need to know that. So if PCE, if CPI, these revisions continue to look piss poor, well, guess what? They're going to continue raising rates, okay? The only bullish aspect of the rates or the Fed is if these rates revise to a better look, right? So I do want to highlight that. I have no predictions on how I think they're going to come out. I have nothing like that, right? I don't know what these numbers are going to be released. I couldn't tell you, right? And I'm not even going to pretend to tell you. I don't lie here on the channel. I try to stay as transparent, as honest as possible. But you need to understand those are going to set the tone for the market. If CPI revision comes out worse, I can guarantee downside for the next almost week. If CPI comes out with a strong revision, which is good for the market, then I can almost guarantee upside for the next 4 to 5 trading days. And most likely an overall upside move into the Fed meeting going into December. Okay? I just want to highlight that. That's just, if you look at what's been said and how we've moved according to this, it makes logical sense in my opinion. And all I try to do here is base my trades based on logic, right? So if we look at tomorrow, there's nothing really big. It's a lot of energy news. So I don't think this is as influential. Watch out for any Fed speakers. And we haven't really seen the end of the midterms, okay? So now you're seeing them saying that there's issues with the polls and this and that. And it's kind of crazy this is happening again, but it is happening nonetheless. So keep it on your radar. Be looking at what's happening. I don't think we're kind of at the end of the midterms yet because now we're still processing votes, whatever that means, right? So that's what we need to look at. Now, I'm going to go over some stocks I'm liking. And if you don't know, every single night, I do go over stocks here on Twitter. So make sure you're following people. I'm just telling you, countless charts I'm covering every day for you guys. I want to make that known. So if we go in here, I'm going to go through a few of the ones I like. Already mentioned DWAC. I have some of that. I'm sized for 0. It's a risky play. I understand. Now, I'm going to show you some of the charts I'm loving. If we look at the day, a few stocks hit all-time highs today. We had Exxon, LMT, Lockheed Martin, and then we had, I believe, McDonald's and someone else. However, the one that has my attention is LMT, Lockheed Martin. This one ended up hitting all-time highs today, really trucking. So this brought me to RTX Raytheon. I love Raytheon and how they're moving. I have a clear-cut supply on the daily. This is a daily supply, just so you know. But I'm looking at this for my targets roughly to 99 to 100. I believe this has a clear-cut potential to break up. You are at resistance locally. This is a key level, so you can realize, you're going to have a little bit of struggle, but you get over this, you can easily start moving. I don't love the options chain. That's the downfall here. And if I'm looking at any options, I'm taking in the money options going into next week. That's what I'd be looking at here specifically. And it's in the strongest sector, which is the Dow. So there is some upside potential here and kind of, controlling your risk here. That's what I love here. Today, the big trade for myself was NVDA. This was the trade that we took in Discord. So I do want to highlight that. Also, if you don't know, the Discord link is down below, but just the trades that I took on the day, right? I took NVIDIA. That was my main trade. I ended up making about 700, give or take, on that trade. That's what we traded this morning. I ended up buying that on the retest, and I also posted that on Twitter. If you look here, it was one of the cleanest, easiest trades. We're talking about this clear-cut supply. You gapped up above, retested, and you went back up. Easy money trade. Boom. We also traded Tesla on the channel and in Discord today towards those new 52-week lows. Another great trade there. But if I'm looking at the market, I want to look at things that have potential. And I love where Amazon is currently. Okay, so if we're looking at this, and this is on the potential of upside, because basically until CPI, I'm trading the upside or focusing on trading the upside. I want to make that really clear. And people keep asking me, when am I going back into puts? I will go back into puts if CPI comes out bad. The end. That's my trade strategy, right? If they come out with bad CPI revision and the market, it gives me the opportunity, I'm going to just trade back to the downside. Now, looking at Amazon, I want to highlight, I love where you're at. I love how you're moving. It's setting up great here, in my opinion. If we look here, I think you have to consider this level right here on the 2-hour, roughly your supply. You could come into something like the 4-hour and try to get it there, but this has to be your area, and you love where you're at. Really forming a strong support down here, and I think you have upside potential into 96, 97 if you can get any sort of breakout here. As you come to the smaller time frames, I do want to highlight how you're moving and ultimately where you're going, right? That's the theme here. So if you look here, it's a little tight. I do want to highlight that you're operating a little bit on the tight end, but I believe this could easily break towards that upside potential. Okay, I do want to highlight that. You can see we did get a little bit of a breakdown, but we held into this pennant also. So I do want to highlight where you're at, how you're moving, and the potential for the upside here. You get the breakout. I think we have lots of room. Minimum target here is around 93, 94, 93, 93.5, and then going into 96, 97. That'd be my next level there. That's what I'd be watching. You have Disney earnings actually happening right now, but earnings on the table, I do want to talk about something that I'm highly interested in. Dutch Bros, one of my favorite tickers. Now, Starbucks just posted great earnings. you don't know, Starbucks is killing it past few days. They've just been going kind of straight up. Dutch Bros, similar type of company. Margins are probably better, and it costs less to run a Dutch Bros. I believe they're booming. I believe they have potential, and I think they're going to do well on earnings, but it's a risky play. However, if you're going into tomorrow, I'd be looking just to trade it inside this pennant, getting some upside potential into 33. If you break out of this, I believe you have room all the way up to 34.5 to 35. This would be one of my cheaper option type plays for you out there interested, and some of the cheaper plays because people do kind of ask for those. So I do like this potentially here also. Now, last play of the day, and I do want to highlight Apple. It's one of the big boys. You've had tons of opportunities here. And if I'm looking at some of this stuff, I'm trying to go with stuff that's less risky. If you don't kind of get what I'm getting at here, right? So if I'm looking at Apple, the 138.05, 138.09 is your key level here. And you're looking for this level to hold. If this level can hold and you can get above 140, I believe you have room. Now, I want to give you a clear-cut target here also. So if we come out tomorrow with any type of bullish behavior, I am targeting easily back up to this 141 level. That's where I'd be looking for this to go. Now, you could easily start to see if you start to get a bit of a retest, you do have a little bit of a flag coming in here. So you want to see if you're going to hold this 138.05, 138 level roughly. If you can hold this level right here, I believe you're looking for a bounce and then a push back up to 140 to 141 as a day trade potentially. That's what you're looking at there. But again, I want to highlight, I'm not looking to trade the downside until the Fed or until we get the CPI data, okay? Because once you get the CPI data, you will have your opportunity. And why am I not looking to trade the downside yet? It's very clear. Your downside opportunity is now limited. Why? Because of where you're at. I mean, granted, you are getting back up to some local highs and where we're at, and you're holding previous June lows right now. But I want to highlight, ultimately, your target has to be about 10.6, 10.65. And ultimately, you're only 300 points away, 350 roughly points away. So just understand the risk to reward strategy here and based on how we're moving structurally. So if we look at the market, we're just not getting enough reward for the risk that people want to take here. And again, I'm one of the most bearish people overall in the market. My long-term viewpoint is still extremely, extremely bearish. But if we look here, you're just moving up in a clear trend to the upside. We don't want to buck the trend until we get clear confirmation on something that's changing this way the market's moving structurally, okay? So be careful, have a plan. I'll see you tomorrow.